My brother got my fiancé drunk, then told him I was cheating on my wedding day, and if you're wondering whether the universe runs on irony or just poor scheduling, I can tell you it was 10:14 a.m. when I realized I was going to have to mediate my own wedding. I'm Maya, 33, a conflict mediator. Yes, professionally, like the person companies bring in when the design team and the sales team hate each other and nobody remembers what the original argument was. I get paid to talk people off ledges and onto bridges. On my wedding day, I discovered you can do all that in good shoes and still be one ugly sentence away from jumping yourself. We picked a small vineyard an hour out of the city, the kind of place where the wind knows secrets and the grapes make the hills look like they're blushing. My best friend Nina had snuck a tiny speaker into the bridal suite and was playing a playlist that ranged from Etta James to Lizzo, like a woman who believes in tradition but also her biceps. My dress was on the hanger like a patient I was about to promise extraordinary care. I had just finished writing my vows in a notebook with coffee stains and 3 false starts when my phone buzzed with a text from my brother Caleb. Need to talk to you now. Caleb and I are Irish twins, 11 months apart, a lifetime of stepping on each other's shadows. He is the kind of handsome you can't be mad at for long and the kind of restless that means you should be. We've gone stretches of months where we speak in emojis and others where we drive at midnight with the windows down and pretend we're still the kids who threw pebbles at the same streetlight until it blinked. He used to make me laugh so hard milk came out my nose. He also has a talent for starting fires he later tells heroic stories about putting out. I called him. He didn't answer. The text bubble appeared, disappeared, then arrived. Julian's not okay. He's in the groomsmen's suite. Julian is my fiancé, 35, a middle school science teacher who will make you love photosynthesis again if you give him 5 minutes and a plant. He's steady in the ways I've always wanted to be and funny in the ways that make me forgive myself for not being. That morning he texted me a picture of his tie and asked, left or right, with 2 identical knots because he knows how to make me feel useful without making me responsible. I had been smiling at it for an hour. I told Nina. She narrowed her eyes like the sky had just lied to her. What did Caleb do? She said, not a question. We walked down the hall, me in a robe, her in the kind of romper you can only wear when your self-esteem is made of titanium, to the groomsmen's suite. The door was ajar. I could hear male laughter, then the sound a body makes when it tries to pretend sitting down is a choice. I pushed the door open with the soft authority of a person who knows nobody is going to argue with a woman whose hair is half-curled and whose face says, I can make your life extremely complicated using only words. Julian was on the couch, elbows on knees, head in hands. His tie was missing. His eyes were red in that way that says either onions or catastrophe. On the low table, a tray with a bottle of whiskey half gone and 2 glasses. Caleb was leaning against the mini-fridge, arms crossed like a man who wants credit for containing a mess he made. What happened? I asked, aiming for calm and landing on a tone I use with toddlers and executives. Caleb lifted his chin. I thought you should know, he said. I told him. He deserved to hear it from me. Told him what? I said, although something cold had already unfolded in my stomach. That you were cheating, he said, looking at me the way a reporter looks at a camera when he thinks this is his Emmy. With Ethan. The room seemed to tilt like a ferry catching a wave. Ethan is my colleague, a lawyer I co-mediation with sometimes when cases have teeth and everyone thinks they're the dentist. He's also gay and in a 7-year relationship with a pastry chef named Marco, and I could feel a hysterical laugh climbing my throat because this was the kind of plot twist that only makes sense if you've never met either of us. Julian looked up at me, slow motion. His eyes were glossy, his hair messier than panic. He said he saw texts, Julian said, voice sanded down. I did, Caleb said quickly. In Maya's phone when she left it on the kitchen counter last week. Late night stuff. Can't stop thinking about last night. He said the line like it had perfume on it. Last night's mediation, I said to Julian, kneeling to his eye level. The one that ended at 9:40 p.m., the one I called you on the drive home from and said, I can't stop thinking about last night because the opposing counsel tried to sneak a clause into the agreement and I wanted to throw a stapler. Julian blinked. He said you didn't call me. He said you went radio silent for hours. I was in a community board meeting with my phone in a basket because they don't allow devices, I said. There's a sign-in sheet. Caleb scoffed. Always a reason, he said. I just thought, better he hear it from family than from the internet later. I stood very slowly and turned to my brother. How drunk is he? I asked, meaning Julian, but looking at the bottle. 2 drinks, Caleb said. He asked for them. I looked at the glasses. The liquid levels didn't match. One was a film. One was a lake. Nina stepped forward, picked up the heavier glass, sniffed it, and said, "These aren't the same." She looked at Caleb like he was a YouTube tutorial on bad decisions. "What did you pour him? Paint thinner?" "Relax," Caleb said, holding his hands up. "He's a grown man." "He's my fiancé," I said. "You brought whiskey to a suite with a guy who barely drinks on a day where people traditionally want to remember things." Julian rubbed his face. "I'm not drunk," he lied like a gentleman. I sat beside him, my robe pooling like fog. "Look at me," I said. He did. I could see the fight in him, the part that wanted a reason to doubt because doubt is a way to protect yourself from falling too hard. I know that part. I dated him. I married him almost. "I did not cheat on you," I said clearly. "I did not even think about cheating on you. If I had, you would have heard about it first, because this is a relationship where we don't outsource difficult conversations to people who bring whiskey into rooms and call it kindness." Nina squeezed my shoulder just once, the exact dose of human I needed. Caleb made a noise that means I'm the victim of your tone. I ignored it. "Julian," I said, "what do you need right now?" "Water." "Time?" "My phone so you can scroll?" "Ethan on FaceTime so he can introduce Marco and their dog?" "Or for Caleb to leave the room so we can talk like adults?" He swallowed. "Water," he said. "And Caleb to leave." My brother's face did a boy thing. He bristled and then arranged himself into martyrdom. "I'm trying to help," he said. "Out," Nina said, almost cheerful, because she knows how to sugarcoat steel. "And take the bottle." He grabbed the whiskey and rolled his eyes so hard the ceiling fan ducked. "Fine. Do your thing," he said, and left, but not before leaning toward Julian like a poison, trying one last time. "You don't have to go through with it if you don't want to," he murmured. "Nobody would blame you." When the door closed, the room exhaled. I poured water from the pitcher into a plastic cup and handed it to Julian. He drank like a man whose body had decided to try honesty. Nina opened a window. Breezes are better than slogans. "I hate that this is happening," Julian said after a minute. "I hate that you're in a robe and I'm this. I hate that my brother thinks love is a stage," I said. "We can hate and still do the next right thing." I handed him my phone. "Open it," I said. "Search Ethan. Read the last 10 messages. Call him if you want." He did. His shoulders relaxed at message 3, then cringed at message 6, where I had typed "I could kiss you" in response to Ethan sending me a PDF he'd rescued from a corrupted drive, and then immediately metaphorically because I knew how it looked. "That's my bad," I said. "I shouldn't use affectionate metaphors with men on the internet." He snorted despite himself. He called Ethan. The face that popped up on screen was a man with flour on his cheek, Marco, who yelled congratulations before Ethan could say hello. Ethan, deadpan, added, "You are the least kissable coworker I have, no offense," and Julian burst out laughing and then almost cried, and I could feel the ship tilting back toward shore. We hung up. He leaned his forehead to mine and whispered, "I trust you." I felt the words land in my chest like scaffolding. Then he added, "I just can't believe he did that." "Oh," Nina said from the window, "I can." She looked at me. "We doing this here or you want to take it to a courtroom later?" I have delivered hundreds of sentences that begin with "today is not the day for," today was apparently the day for everything. "We're going to handle it," I said. "We're also going to move this ceremony 30 minutes because the groom needs a sandwich." Nina clapped like a coach. I love a woman with a plan. The next thing I did was logistical. told the planner to push timelines, told the florist to add 2 extra sprays to the arch because flowers help optimism, told my mother nothing because my mother would try to fix this with lipstick. Then I asked the coordinator to find Caleb and send him to the small conference room behind the kitchen, the one with the terrible chairs and the great acoustics. When he walked in, I was at the head of the table like an HR department with hairpins. "Sit," I said. He did slowly. He knows that voice. He grew up listening to it talk him out of fights and into facts. "I didn't make anything up," he started, preemptive. "I saw what I saw." "What you saw," I said, "was one sentence at the top of a thread you didn't read after pouring double-strength whiskey into my fiancé at 10 in the morning." "I was leveling with him," he said. "Man to man. By intoxicating him and then telling him I was unfaithful," I said, glancing at the glass I'd brought with water just to watch him not touch it. "Why?" He opened his mouth to protest on reflex, then shut it. Silence filled the room like a second, honest person. "Because," he said finally, "I don't want to lose you." There it was. The sentence that has ruined more days than rain. "You're not losing me," I said. "You're losing control." He laughed, one bitter sound. "You always think you have me figured out." "I do," I said, and let the love into my voice because people hear truth better when it holds their face gently. "Since we were 5 and 6 and you stole my Halloween candy and then threw up in the bus stop. Since you got suspended in 10th grade for a fight you started by saying something that sounded noble and wasn't. Since you told me my first boyfriend didn't deserve me and then hit on his sister to prove that you were the hero of the story." "I was protecting you," he muttered. "Like you protected me from Ben by giving him a bottle of tequila and telling him I wasn't ready for serious so he'd dump me before I could," I said. "Caleb, I know the shape of your love. It's hungry." He flinched. He is not a bad man. He is a boy who never learned to say "I'm scared" without first making everyone else back up. "You think he's good enough for you," he said, softer. "You think a teacher's going to keep up with you." "I think a teacher sees me," I said, "and feeds me breakfast when I forget, and doesn't need to win the room to feel alive." He swallowed. "Julian and we were having a good time," he said, lame and small, as if the wording could shrink the act. "You were having control," I corrected gently. "And if you want to stay for this wedding, you're going to apologize and then you're going to leave Julian alone until he starts the conversation. You're going to drink water. You're going to stand where the photographer puts you and not in any doorway. Do you understand me?" "Or what?" he said, and there was the boy again, throwing rocks at the streetlight. "Or I will have you escorted off the property," I said simply. "And then I will not talk to you for a while. And then if you want later when we both have shame hangovers, you can come to my house and I'll make you eggs and we'll talk about what you're trying to protect by breaking the things I love." His face crumpled in that awful, beautiful way men's faces do when they are learning in real time that the person they love will not participate in their usual choreography. "You'd kick me out," he whispered. "I would protect my marriage," I said. He stared at the table. "I'm sorry," he said, to the wood, to his hands, to the air. Then louder, looking at me, "I'm sorry. I was scared." There it was. The sentence that turns villains into men. "I'll fix it." "You can't fix it," I said. "You can repair." I stood. "Come with me." We walked to where Julian was now on the veranda with a plate of crackers and cheese like a human being. He stood when he saw us. Caleb stopped 3 paces away and looked like a man contemplating a language he doesn't speak well but intends to try. "I'm sorry," he said. "I messed up." He swallowed. "I scared you on purpose. That's on me." He glanced at me and then back at Julian. She's never cheated on anyone, man. Not even at cards." I put my hand over my mouth to hold in the laugh and the cry that were trying to share an exit. Julian nodded slowly. "I believe her," he said. "And I hope you get whatever this thing is looked at." Caleb winced. "Yeah," he said. "Me too. We did it. Not the perfect cinematic reconciliation that social media diets on. The real thing, messy and insufficient and enough for this hour." I hugged my brother quickly and then watched him walk away and drink a glass of water like it had a chance. We got married 42 minutes later than planned. The sky had decided to behave. The small delay made the light exactly right, which is either God or weather. I walked down an aisle made out of our friends and my parents' favorite babies. Julian's face did that thing mine does when my favorite song comes on the radio on an empty road. The vows I had written about conflict and wind and building felt too on the nose and just right at once. I told him I wouldn't keep score and that when I did, I'd show him the card and tear it up together. He promised to ask what I meant before deciding what I said. We exchanged rings that were not metaphors, just metal, and kissed like we invented mouths. The party was noisy and kind. Caleb stayed out of doorways. He danced with Nina to September like he knew his life was on probation and joy could be part of the penance. My mother cried and then laughed and then fixed my hair and told me to eat cake. My father told Julian's mother a story about young Maya that started as an embarrassment and turned into an origin myth. At one point I looked over and saw Julian on the grass holding our friend's toddler while the kid pressed a grape into his cheek as if he was soil, and I thought, this is the right person to build weather with. It would be satisfying to end here. But anyone who has ever loved a brother knows there is always an epilogue peeking in the wings. 2 weeks after the wedding, Caleb texted a photo of a meeting schedule. Went to a thing, he wrote. The thing was not magic. It was men in a church basement drinking bad coffee and telling the truth about all the ways they've grabbed microphones in rooms where other people should have been speaking. He went back the next week. He asked me to coffee and said, I think I make messes when I feel left. I said, that's better than I don't know. Julian and I hung our vows in the kitchen where the light hits them at breakfast so I can read the parts one forget while making eggs. On Sundays, we go to the park and pretend we're retired. Sometimes Caleb comes. He brings a frisbee like a peace offering and we play badly and with great enthusiasm. He asks Julian about lesson plans. He asks me nothing about Ethan because I've told him some subjects are closed electives. If you're reading this because the person who taught you how to ride a bike tried to puncture your wedding tires, here's what I learned, sweaty and in love and slightly overdressed. 1. Someone else's panic is not your plan. 2. On the day you promise a life, you are allowed to protect your mind like it's part of your body because it is. 3. Water beats whiskey before noon. 4. Apologies are the start of repair, not the blueprint. 5. Joy delayed sometimes returns with better light. I kept my measuring voice for my work. At home, I use the one that laughs easy and says I'm scared before I salt it into anger. Julian keeps a bottle of whiskey on the top shelf for a guest who asks, and 2 bottles of sparkling water within reach for the man he wants to be. Caleb sends me blurry photos of sunrises after his early meetings and writes, still here. I reply, me too. We are learning to stay. We are learning to leave the microphones on the table for the people who own the story. And when the sky cooperates, we dance. Even when it doesn't, we dance anyway.